Hey, we're here. Welcome, everybody. I'm Matt Kelly, obviously not Jonathan of Geekscape, Matt Kelly of Horror Movie Night. And we are going to be trying to do a few more of these throughout the year, which is like, hey, it's a big anniversary of a movie we all love. Let's try to get a couple people to sit down and reminisce. And you, the audience, can also share your memories or ask us questions about these films. And what we're doing today is that 40 years ago, on I believe it's going to be Friday or Saturday, whatever June 8th is. Uh both Ghostbusters and Gremlins came out the same day, which is crazy. Those are two massive movies, and I had to bring along with me for this chat one of the Jersey Ghouls, my good friend Jacki.
Hello, hello.
Boom, we got a comment already from Literary Love 123 that says, "Hello, Matt and Jacki, 40 years. Lord, I feel old."
Hello, Jen.
And boy, do I agree, because like I think that both of these movies, for me, and I'm a little bit younger than you, I think by like a year or two, but I think
Or
we're
five.
close enough in age that like these we don't have a memory of these movies coming out. These movies just existed.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I was 3. I was born in 81. So I
yeah.
was 3 when this movie came out. So my recollection of this movie was a handful of years later. I had an older brother who loved the movie. So in turn, if he liked it, well then of course I liked it. And really my first memories of like the movies was actually part 2. So I had like a well ingrained love of this first one by the time the second one came out. And then it's just steamrolled and it's been my favorite ever since.
Well, and for me, I'm 85, so that 3-year difference makes a big difference in general, because for me, it was the cartoon series. And
Mhm.
watching the cartoon series and going, "What the heck is this cartoon series about?" And diving back into time to figure it all out. Literary Love 123 says, "I was 9 when these movies came out. I saw both in theaters and still recall the experience vividly." Would love to know about what the experience was seeing this movie, because I think like it's easy to forget how impressive the special effects are in both of these movies, and how well they, like, 40 years later, they do not save like one or two shots in each movie. They still look pretty seamless and perfect all these years later.
Yeah, this is a movie that holds up.
Yeah.
Maybe a few problematic jokes aside, but what movie from the 80s doesn't have a few problematic jokes with a 2024 lens? But
It's part of
the
the appeal of watching
yeah,
them at this point.
but no, the special effects absolutely hold up in certain cases with this movie.
So let's focus on Ghostbusters first. You're dressed as a Ghostbuster.
I thank
You
you,
had
Don.
texted me when I had first started pitching the idea of doing a live stream based on anniversaries, and you texted me and said, I will be mad at you if I don't get to do the
Yes.
Ghostbusters one."
That's
So
true. It is no secret that among my friends, I'm the Ghostbuster girl. To know me is to know that any of my social media handles is no Jackie underscore only Zool. I've probably You can see behind me here on this side, this entire shelf of pop vinyls is nothing but Ghostbusters. They get their own special shelf because I've got so many of them.
let's go full screen so
Yeah,
people
see,
can
it's
see a
hard to
little
see.
better.
I
Wow.
got like a Firehouse and an Ecto one, and I've got a Stay Puff, and I got some of them that are covered in marshmallow and some that aren't. I have Dana as Zool, and I have the Firehouse Lego set. I have a copy of Tobin's Spirit Guide. Like the Ghostbusters franchise has taken a lot of my money, but very lovingly and willingly, I give them all of my money.
Yeah, the Ghostbusters franchise isn't sneaking up behind you on a dark alley and demanding
No,
it. Uh,
not at all.
but I mean, with look, I have favorite movies that I feel ashamed in public to say they're my favorite movie. I don't think anyone would feel ashamed to say Ghostbusters is their favorite movie. It's so beloved. It's
Yeah.
so iconic. I mean, it's so funny. There's so much there, right? And I think about this with me. I don't think we've ever actually talked about your journey in horror, but for me, I was afraid to watch horror movies. I would watch like the black and white Universal movies with my grandfather, and that was about as spooky as I got. But yet, like from the age of 3, I was watching Ghostbusters and Beetlejuice
Mhm.
without a problem in the world, not really piecing together that they were. in some small way, a horror film.
And I think that's what makes Ghostbusters such a good gateway film into like when you're a little bit younger. Exactly. Like Adam's Family and Ghostbusters, things that I think are more comedy horror as opposed
Yeah.
to horror comedy like a Shaun of the Dead or a Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I think this is a very nice, easy gateway into something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, my horror journey, it was like a Stockholm syndrome situation because again, with an older brother, um, the way that our bedrooms, like my bedroom, if my bedroom door was open, I had a clear view of his bedroom door, which he was an older brother, so his bedroom door was always shut. Um,
Oh,
at a
I do
young
know this
age, he
story.
had a
You've talked about
the
this on Jersey Ghouls, the
yes,
Freddy
he
poster.
had
Yeah.
a door length Freddy Krueger poster. So I always slept with my door open. So the last thing that little Jackie saw before she went to sleep every night was Freddy Krueger. And then eventually I just kind of got used to it and then wanted to see the movies. So I think between that and then at a very young age, I saw the Monster Squad and was absolutely enthralled and in love. And I wanted more. Same thing, like, and then from the Monster Squad, I'm like, well, I need to see Dracula and I need to see Frankenstein and I need to see Wolfman. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a never-ending spiral of, like,
Yes.
when you but it's so funny because I look back on it and I'm like, "Man, I was afraid to watch these horror movies," and, like, they rip a face off in Beetlejuice, and that had, like, no effect on me. Jen is back in the comments saying Monster Squad. Yes, big exclamation point.
Absolutely.
Listen, that there will be, I'm sure we're getting close to another anniversary in 3 or 4 years. We will absolutely go live and maybe we'll even bring the squad with us to talk about it a little bit.
Mhm.
You and I both have some good contacts with Rudy and Sean at this point in our lives, so we'll make it happen. But we're not here to talk about the Monster Squad, even though
Not
it's the
today.
best ever. I mean, Ghostbusters. I think this is one of those movies that every time I watch it, there's more bits and pieces of it that I forgot about. That like I just completely or like jokes I didn't get. Like especially the early part where they're like kind of college professors sort of that are
Mhm.
getting fired. Like there's so many good jokes just about like the college industry in general and like how they were basically just getting funding
Yeah.
for reasons unknown and they like knew it. They're like,
Mhm.
"Hey, this thing's just a cash cow. If we just keep doing this, we don't even have to provide results for the most part."
Well, I think that was the mentality of Peter.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I feel, Ray, I think, enjoyed it and it was fun. Egon is a man of science.
Yes.
Egon was in it with his whole brain.
Yeah. I mean, well, let's talk about what this movie almost was first,
Yeah.
because there was a point where this movie was never going to happen. Dan Aykroyd had written it, hoping that it was going to be the next big buddy movie with him and John Belushi, and then unfortunately John Belushi died, and he kind of shelved it for many, many years, and then dusted it off. And I believe the original script, and you're the expert, so
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but I believe the original script was like imagining a future in which Ghostbusters were like hiring an exterminator. Like it was just like a franchise that you would call.
Mhm.
And it was, it also, I think, got real into the nitty gritty of like how ghosts come to be and like all the mechanics and the technology. Like I think it was like a 300 or 400 page like
It was,
phone
and it
booth
was
of a phone book of a script.
it was at the time in the early 80s, looking it on paper, like there was no way they were going to be able to pull off the special effects that would
Yeah.
have required with the story. Yeah, it was the original drafts are so different than what we got, and casting was extremely different than what we got. I
Yeah.
know that what was it? John Candy was supposed to be Venkman.
No, I thought John Candy was actually supposed to be the Rick Moranis character, and that
Oh
he wanted to
yeah,
do
that's
it.
right.
He wanted to do it in like a thick German accent, which I think would have been a bad call. I am a huge John Candy stan, and I think that that would have been a
Yeah.
mistake.
Oh yeah.
But I think it was Eddie Murphy was in contention at
Mhm.
one point. Um, just there was a lot of different casting ideas. I don't think Harold Ramis was ever envisioned as being anyone more than the director at the start of this whole project. And
Mhm.
I genuinely can't think of another human being that could be
Oh, I know.
Egon at this point.
I know. And I'm honestly glad that Winston ended up being Ernie Hudson because I
Yeah.
think we needed that everyman
He
character. I think we
brings
kind of needed to play that straight man, everyman. He's, I mean, Egon's obviously a straight man too, with, he's just analytical and logic and it's all science, but we just needed that like everyman character. And I thought
yeah.
that Ernie Hudson did such, I'm glad it wasn't Eddie Murphy at the end of it.
I think they're all honestly, Venkman is the only one I would say isn't an everyman, but it's that the other three are so cartoonish in how they're an everyman, where
Mhm.
like Ernie Hudson, they're also so in the weeds of it all. Ernie Hudson as Winston is perfect because he's like the voice of the audience asking the questions that we're asking.
Mhm.
Right? Like he's like, how did you create like he's the one that
Yeah.
asked, how did you create this technology? Or how did you do this? Or why do you think this is happening? Because it's understood that these guys have been working together for years. And like
Mhm.
why would Egon like maybe 8 years into a partnership just be like, hey Ray, how did you come up with this event? You know what I mean? Like it's like, no, that would never come up between these three guys at that point. So having this Winston character who's also kind of the skeptic of the group at the
Oh
start,
yeah.
like adds so much more. I mean, it's interesting to me that Venkman also kind of plays the skeptic despite how many times he's encountered ghosts throughout the movie. Like it's almost like he's ashamed to admit that he now believes in ghosts, so he has to just play it dumb, like play dumb when he's talking to other people about it. Like
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
makes jokes about it. Um I think that in a lot of lenses, Venkman might be the most insufferable character in the movie now as an adult.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's a jerk. I don't know. I am
I used to think he was the
absolutely,
coolest, though. I
yeah.
loved him as a kid.
I'm blinded by nostalgia and love because on one hand, yeah, Bankman is an absolute jerk, and at the same time, I'm like, but he's a lovable jerk. He's our jerk. Like I can
Yeah,
call him a jerk because this is my favorite film. But if
yeah,
somebody else is criticizing the movie and they're like, "Well, I hate Bankman," I'm like, "Well, then I'll fight you." Like
yeah.
it's very protective.
I feel like Venkman falls into the same category as like early Adam Sandler for me, which I feel like is a I can already see the hesitancy, but like my argument has always been as a kid, I thought Venkman was so cool. I thought Billy Madison was the coolest. But now in my like late 30s watching those movies, I'm like, I would be miserable if I had to hang
I
out with
know.
either one of these people
No.
for
As
like
an
more
adult,
than
I turn
10
and walk
minutes. I would
away.
be so exhausted by them. I'd be like, you need to go. I
I know.
can't deal with your constant sarcasm and
Oh yeah. As a
douchebagginess.
child, I would try to manipulate conversations with people so I could work in Venkman's dialogue, like and act like it was something witty that I thought of. Yeah, yeah. There was at one point I had aspirations of being like the first 7-year-old on Star Search, that wins being a comedian.
Yeah.
As I sat there with my hairbrush and I had little Bill Cosby stand up on cassette, and I
Yeah.
would play it, and that was like my party trick where I'd play it, and I would just lip sync with a hairbrush on the coffee table to all the family and friends that were over. I thought I was going to grow up to be a comedian, so yeah, I would watch this movie and over again, memorize a lot of the lines, and yeah, try to work in some Peter Venkman one liners into my conversation because I'm the funny 8-year-old.
Well, listen, you became the next best thing to a comedian, a podcaster.
Became a podcaster, a very unique position.
Yeah. um, how do we feel about Ghostbusters 2?
I love Ghostbusters
I
too.
do too.
I
I
absolutely
know we're
love
talking
it.
about your favorite movie. I might choose to watch Ghostbusters 2 over Ghostbusters 1 if I
Uh,
only have time to watch
I
one of
mean,
them.
they are
Like,
I mean, Ghostbusters 2 is still in the top 5 movies for me. I mean, Ghostbusters solidly number 1 forever and always. Ghostbusters 2 will filter some numbers sometimes, but it's always in the top 5. I absolutely adore Ghostbusters 2. I don't think it's better than the original for me personally, but it
yeah.
is just like it is a hair underneath. I
I
absolutely love
would never say it is a better movie or script than the
it.
first
Mhm.
one. I think this is actually one of the best comedy scripts of the entire 80s. I think it's
Yes.
very tight and well constructed. Just from sheer level of fun. There's just so many moments in Ghostbusters 2 that I'm just like, wow, this movie's like them in the sewer system with the skulls on the spikes and everything.
I
It's
think
awesome.
I think without Peter McNichol, I don't love the movie as much as I absolutely do. If it was anybody other than Peter McNichol playing Janos, I don't
Yes.
know that I love the movie the way that I do because I mean, forever. Like there were things I saw, years later with him in it, and I'm like, oh, it's Janos. He's always, and I know. So I think he was an Ally McBeal.
Yep.
And for me, I see Peter McNichol, and he's either Janos or he's Renfield from Dracula Dead and
Yep.
Loving It. I'm like, that's
That's
that's what I hold on
this
to.
is why you and I were such fast friends, because that is my reference point. This is a man that we're talking about that quite literally quite literally has done like award-winning films, and we're the people that are like, yeah, but have you seen his Renfield in
Have
Dracula
you
Dead and Loving
seen it?
It?
Yeah, I'm fairly certain he's done like Shakespeare in London. Like he is a well-trained actor. Oh, but yeah, but I'm like, he's
That's fine.
Janos.
He can be a well-trained actor. That still isn't going to stop me from saying things like drinking wine and eating chitin.
Yeah.
It's like, uh and my friend Lauren Longbottom said I only
Oh,
knew him from Adam's Family as the
that's
camp
right.
counselor, which is also a great role for him
Gary Granger.
as the overly cheery camp counselor in Adam's Family Values. July, or sorry, we're in June. June
We're
is the
June.
month in which we live. June clearly became like the month of the Ghostbusters because the sequel, which is also celebrating an anniversary, it's celebrating 35 years
Mhm.
on June 16th, 1989. And then the Ghostbusters video game has a 15-year anniversary also on June 16th. So they really decided June was the month of
Okay,
Ghostbusters. And I'm
that's
pretty
fine.
sure, without doing the research, I'm pretty sure even at least I would say that the female Ghostbusters came out in late June, and I believe Afterlife came out in
Hmm.
June as well, because I remember them both being summer movies at the time that they came out. So I guess there's just something in the air that June is the time for when people most want to bust.
Yeah.
It's- oh, and when Lauren saw it on her birthday in July, I think she's talking about Answer the Call,
Okay.
which I don't know about you. I choose to not talk about that Ghostbusters movie.
I pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
And I know that ruffles from some feathers, but I'm kind of a purist. It's not canon. And
yeah,
you know what? If you like that Ghostbuster, like rock on. Like
yeah.
you can love it. I'm never gonna tell somebody that like I hate your movie or don't watch it. Like if you want to watch, like seriously, like I'm sitting here telling you that Ghostbusters is my all-time favorite movie. If you want to watch it, I think that's awesome. Go for it. For me, like I'm very much like of the purist of like just give me my canon. And again, that's a lot of like I know it's narrow-minded. It's a lot of nostalgia talking. Like this is me since like birth loving this franchise. So,
Do
like I said,
you
if people like it, then I think that's all good.
do you know about the review that I wrote on that movie for Geekscape about how I felt you could make the movie better?
I feel like when it came out, I remember reading it, but refresh my memory.
So this is leading into something else, but I had written a thing about how I saw the movie and I wanted to like the movie so much and something wasn't working for me. And part of it is like you said, it's kind of outside the canon.
Hmm.
And I was like, why couldn't we have worked in the canon of the movie? And I was like, so here's how I would fix it. And I was like, start the movie with these three characters and they're watching television and you see the Ghostbusters ad on the TV. And one of them can even say, like, I think it's so cool that your uncle is a Ghostbuster. And they're like having this conversation. You have like some strange light shine from the bed, like a closet door. They all scream, cut to credits. We jump ahead a couple years later. Egon has unfortunately passed away, and his niece inherits the company, and that is the Egon like character. And
Hmm.
then she reassembles her old friends who all experience this ghost thing to become Ghostbusters, and then like you go from there. So imagine my surprise a couple years later when Afterlife comes out, and I'm like, Yeah, this is basically what I proposed. That's what I should
Damn you, Aykroyd! You stole my work.
I know. I've been listen, lawsuit pending.
Yeah,
But I will say, I I don't know. After like when I saw Afterlife in theaters, I loved it. I don't know if I still love it. Stepped away from that, but dear God, do I still think that the ending of that movie, whether it's just a gimmick or not, makes me cry my eyes out every time it happens because
I
it's such a beautiful pin to
yeah.
the story.
I can't tell you how many times I cried watching that movie. Like it was just at random points throughout the movie, something got me.
Oh, a music cue would
And
just happen, and all of a sudden the tears would
I
start to well up, and I was
I
like, "Why is this happening?"
sobbed so many times. But then yeah, and I was like, "Oh my god, I love it. Like thank God for this
Yeah,
movie
now I
and the
feel
whole nine."
manipulated by
Yeah, and now I'm like, they really just kind of rehashed the first movie. I will say, however, though, Frozen Empire, I really did enjoy, mostly because I'm like, this feels exactly like an episode of the real Ghostbusters.
and that's what I heard. I still haven't seen it, so
Oh,
I have
it's
to
fun.
check it out.
It is I mean, like, it's again, you're not going to touch OG Ghostbusters, but it is a fun, like, popcorn movie with this universe and with these characters, and yet it feels very much like it was a discarded script from the cartoon that they brought to life and they made it 90 minutes.
So someone named Jackknife is commenting and said the Ghostbusters cheated the copyright holders out of that name. The Ghostbusters is a cartoon with a gorilla. Creative
Mhm.
Film Accounting prevented them from being paid for the use of the name, which is true. I've also watched that version of Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
It's pretty awful.
Yeah.
It's, but I do love that like basically that cartoon came back in the 80s to cash in on Ghostbusters fame. And that's why the cartoon of Ghostbusters is called The Real Ghostbusters,
It's the real Ghostbusters. Yeah.
which I think is
Yeah.
such a nice little dig in the name of the movie, even though they're the actual original Ghostbusters.
They technically came first. Sure thing. Sure thing. Yeah, no, I've seen that too because I was like, well, I gotta check it out. Like, let me see and then I was like, what the hell am I watching?
I mean, people can maybe see it behind me. I have a very extensive DVD collection, and someone had gifted me. They're like, I think you might find this interesting. And it was like the first season of that version of the Ghostbusters. And I don't get rid of much, but that
Yeah.
went immediately on the like, oh, we're going to sell that at a convention. There will never be a reason that I pop that DVD
Yeah.
back into my player because it did nothing for me.
Yeah.
Like nothing at all. Um, so obviously there's a couple people tuning in. If you have any questions about our fandom of this, I mean, I know we're just two people from the internet who love this stuff.
Mhm.
But let's switch it up real quick. Let's talk about the other movie that came out this year. Because I mean, look, I host a horror podcast and I host a Christmas podcast. So by that nature, I think I'm conditioned to love Gremlins. What is your feeling on Gremlins?
I love Gremlins.
Yeah.
Gremlins is another one of those gateway horror films where it is, there are some spooky horror-ish elements to it, but it's also accessible. It's
Yep.
family friendly kind of thing. And again, it's one of those fun spooky movies that is completely, okay, we're going to call it a Christmas movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely it's a Christmas movie.
And I love that you learn how horrific that movie could have been if they had followed the original script. Like there's a scene in the kitchen where
Oh,
your main character's mom is being attacked by gremlins and she survives by like, microwaving them and shoving
mhm.
them into blenders and it's goopy and fun. The original script, she does not survive that scene and her son finds her decapitated head in the
In the
microwave.
microwave.
Like it could
Okay,
have been a much more messed up movie.
in the theatrical cut, that kitchen scene is one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie. Is
Yeah.
is Billy's
Oh, it's an
mom
amazing set piece.
versus them. Oh, second only to when all the gremlins are watching Snow White in the movie theater. But but yeah, that kitchen scene is so good. And yeah, knowing the original, like I'm glad that we kept it very family friendly ish. But yeah, like if we want like the deep horror cut, then we keep the splatterpunk, Billy's mom
Yeah.
scenes.
I really wanted to love the Gremlins. This is from Lauren. Really wanted to love the Gremlins, but it scared the crap out of me as a kid and even as an adult. I just get bad vibes. Maybe one day. I don't like there are for a movie that I would describe as lighthearted and fun, there are like 2 or 3 scenes that there's nothing even involving gremlins happening. It's just conversation between characters that is shot so uncomfortably. Like I think of like him talking to Mr. Fetterman as he's about to leave the bar and he like goes on this rant about gremlins, but it's like ominous music while he's talking about it. And then of
Mhm.
course, I mean, if you haven't watched Gremlins in a while and you're thinking about introducing it to your children, I will say watch it first because there is a whole scene involving Phoebe Cates and what happened to her dad that as an adult kind of hilarious in how dark it is, but
Yeah,
I could see it being really upsetting and lead to some strange conversations with your children.
that's very true. That is very true. Yeah, that's I forget. I So Joe Dante, right? He's the
Yep.
one that directs. Yeah. So I remember listening to a podcast about it. Maybe it was yours. I don't remember. But listening to somebody talking about that, like he had to fight for that Phoebe Kate scene
Yeah,
to be in
that
the movie.
was I'm willing to bet that wasn't us because we actually still haven't done Gremlins. We've only done Gremlins
Okay,
2. I think
fair,
it was Analog Jones because I'm remembering this
probably.
exact same conversation.
Okay, so then it was Analog Jones. Yeah, that he had, and it's funny because I watched that, and that I remember that was like, well, that took me out of it. Like I'm
Yeah,
here for like a fun time, Gremlins movie, and now we're getting all serious and we're telling a real terrible story. And
real
I
terrible.
at a point I was just like, I hated that scene because it totally took me out of it. But yeah, as I'm older now and I've seen it so many times now, that to me that's just like comedy gold, and I'm
Yeah.
so glad that he fought for that scene to be in there.
And I mean, Gremlins famously is one of the 2 movies that Spielberg produced in the early 80s that led to them creating a PG-13. It was the violence in Gremlins and that Phoebe Kate scene mixed with the Temple of Doom heart rip out that eventually
We
made the
get
studios go like
PG-13.
we need something that's not quite an R but not quite a PG because parents are getting real upset about what we're
Yeah,
giving the
and
PGs to.
thanks for that,
Yeah.
Spielberg, because my parents were sticklers for that PG-13 rating. If I was 12 and a half and wanted to see a PG-13 movie, they kind of put up a fight like, well, you're not 13 yet. You might not be able to handle it.
I
So,
think parents forgot that the PG was supposed to stand for parents guidance.
yeah.
Parents guidance if they're under 13. It's
Yeah.
still your call. It's not illegal for me at
Yeah.
11 to see it if you think I'm going to be fine. Now, my parents, I mean, my parents are pretty cool about that. My parents let me watch R-rated movies as long as they were in the room with me and they could confirm that it wasn't like it was just like My Cousin Vinny and it was rated R for language. They
Mhm.
would just be like, "Don't say those words," and then like
Yeah.
move on with it. If it was R for like violence or sex, then they really locked that
Yeah.
shit down and I wasn't allowed to touch it.
Yeah,
Um,
my parents, like, they didn't like, I tried to watch as many horror movies as I could as a kid. But for me, my parents, like, while they rolled their eyes, as long as it was on cable. Like I
yeah,
remember like Sunday afternoons on Philly 57, Jason Part 6 would be on and I'd be like, "Let's do this." And they'd be like, "What are you watching?" And I'm like, "Friday the 13th." They're like, on because we had HBO and we
yeah,
had Prism. And they were like, "What channel?" And I'm like, "Look, it's Philly 57." And they were like, "Okay, you're fine
yeah,
then."
you're good. Keep it on.
Yep. Yep.
Um, man, and until you're older, you don't realize how much of that movie you've missed out on
Uh-huh.
until you
Yeah.
watch the real version. You're like, "Oh, yeah, there was
Yeah.
a lot more happening in this film."
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, "Man, the Friday the 13th movies are pretty bloodless." When I would watch it on USA, I didn't get that stuff could be edited for television.
Mhm.
Um, quick fun story about specifically my dad's lack of care for the rating system was I had a sleepover for my 13th birthday and I did what every kid does for a sleepover, which is just like let's rent a ton of movies, order pizza, and stay up late watching movies and eating pizza. And we gave a list of movies to my dad to rent for us. And he rented a movie that wasn't on the list because he felt like at 13 it was time for me to see one of his favorite movies, which was, of course, Porky's. So, which my mom still brings up as like, we didn't even tell the parents what we were renting. Like, we could have gotten in so much trouble if like any of them got even remotely upset about that. Like, thankfully, like I didn't have a lot of friends back then, so it was just like the kids of my parents' friends. So like
Yeah.
they were all on the same page, but dear Lord. Uh Gremlins, Gremlins, I will say, when I said that like I would lean towards maybe watching Ghostbusters 2 while knowing that Ghostbusters is the better movie. Across the board, I think Gremlins 2 is the better movie.
I
I think
agree.
it's
Yeah.
funnier, it's better written, it moves quicker. Like there's everything I love how much it makes fun of the first Gremlins.
And I think that's why I like it. I agree wholeheartedly. Now, again, I think that Gremlins is an awesome movie. I absolutely love it. And again, like it's neck and neck. But I think if I have both movies in my hands, I'm going to put on Gremlins 2 before I put on the first Gremlins. And now maybe because I've seen the original Gremlins more than the second one, even though I've seen the second one a bunch of times, I think just like that overly
It's like a Looney Tunes movie. It's
yeah,
so
it's
cartoonish.
it's a live action cartoon, and I just think the inventive I mean, the vegetable gremlin might be one of my favorite
Yeah.
gremlins.
I mean, the smart gremlin that sings New York,
Mhm.
New York at the every one of the gremlins is cool. My favorite is the bat one that freezes like a gargoyle on the side of the
Yeah,
building, but like they just look so cool. And again, going back to the Phoebe Cates, they do that hilarious callback where now she's telling a story of something horrible that happened to her on President's Day.
yeah,
It's like, and it's just like every single beat of Gremlins 2 is making fun of Gremlins 1. Lauren, you should just watch Gremlins 2. I think you'd have more fun with it and it would prepare you for
yeah,
revisiting Gremlins by Christmas time because it'll make it less scary because you're just going to be like, oh, this is just goofy and stupid.
yeah.
Which is the attitude you have to have going into Gremlins. Jackie, there's one more thing we have to talk about.
Okay.
And I didn't even think that we were going to talk about this, but we said the word Looney Tunes. We are okay, so never mind on that.
No,
Uh,
yeah.
we've we talked about Looney Tunes. We talked about Ghostbusters. We have to talk about Daffy Duck Quackbusters, which is one of the finest collections of spooky Looney
Yes.
Tunes shorts ever compiled. And I remember you and I fighting with Marissa about this on Jersey Ghouls many, many years ago.
That's true. I know. You see, I'm one of the weirdos that, when you have all the major cartoon houses. I know that Disney is top of the tops for so many people, but I have always been in, the Looney Tunes Hanna-Barbera camp. And I remember seeing Crackbusters. I think it was on HBO at one point when I
It
was
was on
younger.
some chat. I'm gonna have to see if I can find this. I have a Dropbox. I should share the access to you where I've been digitizing VHS tapes
Mhm.
that I just have around my house. And some are just like old tapes that like my aunts or uncles or grandparents would make for me. And I've digitized so many of these like CBS TV specials where it's like the Looney Tunes worldwide, like wide world of sports. And it's just like an hour of like Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny hosting an awards ceremony, but like every nominee leads into like a classic Looney Tunes sports
Oh yeah.
related short. Like I ate that shit up for breakfast. And I was like, this is so good. So when you invited me on the Jersey Ghouls, God, that had to have been like almost a decade ago. That felt
No,
so long ago. Like that.
it feels a lot longer. I think it was probably 5 or 6 years ago because Jersey
Really?
Ghouls has been going for 8 years now. So that was probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Are you sure that wasn't like 18 or 19?
I know it was pre-COVID,
Yeah, it had
but
that's what
I'd
I'm
have to,
saying.
I'd
I think
have
it
to
was
look
5 or
back.
6 years ago
Yeah,
for
I'd
us.
have to look back at
Yeah,
when it was,
but
but yeah, Daffy Duck's Quackbusters. So for me, I mean, I have my grandmother was a big influence in the music that I listened to.
yeah,
And because of her, I listened to a lot of big band music and crooners and things like that.
again, why you
So,
and I get along so
yeah,
well.
so
Yeah.
when the beginning of Quackbusters is Mel Torme singing a song about like universal monsters, I was absolutely hooked.
Yeah.
Like that is a song I will legitimately. There are certain songs that are not available on Spotify that sometimes I just want to hear. We talked about Monster Squad.
Yeah.
Rock Until You Drop is not available on Spotify. So sometimes if I'm just in the mood to jam while I'm sitting in traffic at my commute, I just go onto YouTube and I'll just
And
play like
find the
a
song
yeah. And I do the same thing with
with the
oh
Quackbusters theme.
with the monsters are I'm suddenly
Oh my
forgetting
god,
what
I'm
it is.
blanking on what it's called. Oh my god, I'm right.
Um
It's on the tip of my tongue. I'm looking at.
Monsters lead unusual lives. Now I gotta
I'm looking.
something.
Let's see. You can get there quicker. Davy Duck's Quackbusters.
Monsters lead such interesting lives.
There it is.
But yeah, I'll go on YouTube when I'm hankering for that song, and I will just play the YouTube opening of Daffy Duck's Quackbusters.
Wow. Sorry, I clicked into the home video and said it was released on DVD in 2009 through
Yeah,
Warner Brothers Home Video.
I own Quackbusters on DVD. That was an Amazon scoop that, like, I don't know, probably Prime Day a couple years ago. I probably scored it for like $5, and I was like, oh my god, Quackbusters.
what a get. Like I man, I'm jealous that I don't have that DVD. Because that would absolutely fall into my October viewing. No, I think that I fall into a similar vibe. I am a Disney adult for sure, but I'm not a loyalist to any camp. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I can love my nostalgia for 80s and 90s Disney cartoons just as much as I can love what my Nicktoons were in the 90s. And
Mm.
I think being a Nickelodeon kid, they played a lot of old Looney Tunes cartoons on Nickelodeon in the afternoon. And that was where I start to be like, I love all these characters. This is great. Like even Hanna-Barbera, I used to have I think I've digitized it by now. If not, I'm going to soon. I had a VHS tape that was like it was like music videos set to Hanna-Barbera cartoons. So it'd be like Catch a Wave and You're Sitting on Top of the World by Jan and Dean. It would just be footage of all these old Hanna-Barbera cartoons of them surfing set to the song and shit. And they did a Monster Mash one with like clips from like the Groovy Goalies and stuff like that. Like
I'll tell you that the primary reason for two of the streaming services I have are nostalgia based. I have Paramount Plus, so
oh, do
I
I?
can
Yeah.
see a lot of those old Nicktoons. Now, granted, I own a ton of them on DVD, but same thing with I have Boomerang. I have
Yeah.
Boomerang, so I can watch all the old Scooby Doo and Hanna-Barbera stuff.
Let me tip you off on my new favorite app, which is like ever. I feel like a lot of people are talking about this app, but I'm a person who needs something familiar on television to fall asleep. So I
Mhm.
usually lean towards commentary tracks, but every once in a while, I put on Pluto TV,
Oh
and
yes,
Pluto TV literally has a channel called 90s Nick that is just like Monday night, it's all SpongeBob. Tuesday night, it's all Hey Arnold. Wednesday night, it's all Ren and Stimpy. Thursday night, it's all Doug. Friday night, it's all Rugrats.
that's
And I'm like, you know
amazing.
what? Because then it's like the guesswork is gone. I just put
Mhm.
it on and it's just going to keep feeding me random episodes of something. I also just, side note, in case I wasn't already hooked on Pluto TV, they just announced this week that they will be adding an all Mr. Rogers Neighborhood channel to Pluto TV. And I
Eh,
can't think of a better thing to just be like, I just want some background noise on. Like, let me just hear the soothing voice of Fred Rogers in the land of imagination
there you
for,
go.
for a couple hours. So, and it's free, everybody. Go get the Pluto TV app. It's just a free app
Definitely.
that makes it feel like you're watching TV in the 90s all over again. Even when you have to search the channels, it looks like the TV Guide channel.
Yeah, no, I do. I like Pluto TV. I like that a lot.
It's so comforting to not have to think. You know what I
You
mean?
know
Like I'm
what?
just
Honestly, so at my job, luckily I have an office job where I am at my desk doing work 90% of the time. So I always have my phone going with something or another.
yeah.
Now sometimes, while I'm doing something, I can pay attention. I know I watch some stuff for the podcast or whatever, but a lot of the times I just kind of need background stuff. So I'm the same way. I want something familiar that I don't necessarily have to be like paying attention to.
Yeah,
So
I want to
that's
be able
where
to
a lot
walk
of the
away and come back and not be
yeah,
lost.
it's where a lot of these Nicktoons cartoons come in. Right now, I'm rewatching on YouTube a playthrough of video games that I like, that I've
Yeah.
seen and played, and it's something nice in the background. But at the same time, like when I can look at my screen, I'm entertained by it. But for the most part, yeah, I can walk away. I can be doing something else, or I'm very much in the same way of just give me something comforting, familiar, and then I can just relax and do what I need to do.
Well, let's bounce to this real quick then, and I think we can wrap it up on this because I've never played this. You are way more of the gamer than I am. I think that I stick to very retro. I think that you've kept up with gaming for the most part. Did you play that Ghostbusters video game from 2009?
I did play that game. I don't
Is it
think
as
I
good as
finished it.
people have said it is?
It was very good. Like
Okay.
the whole idea of you are the Ghostbuster. You know, the
Yeah,
idea of
you're not
you
playing as Peter or Bray. You
yeah,
are
you
playing as
are
you,
playing
Jackie.
as me. And you see, it's the video game POV. So you see the little hands come up when you're, your proton packs and you are getting the ghosts.
Yeah, you're getting to hang out with your friends in the
Yeah. I
Ghostbusters,
mean,
not pretend to
again,
be one.
like
That's awesome.
the story wasn't like super original, like again, where there's a lot of rehashing of stuff, but at the same time, it was okay because it was again, it was a whole new point of view.
Well,
So
at
yeah,
that
I
point,
did
it
I
had
did play it.
been what, it'd been 20 years since anything really
I'll
Ghostbusters.
I'll
So
tell you, for the longest time, I was completely satisfied that that was my Ghostbusters 3,
yeah,
like because there was the whole after Ghostbusters 2, like immediately, obviously, it's the Hollywood machine. Well, let's pump out more Ghostbusters. And I know I'd read it a million times that, between Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd, and Ivan Reitman and even Bill Murray, when all of them could agree on the script,
yeah,
then they were going to move forward with part 3. And they never could agree. Like it didn't work out. And, Harold Ramis passes away. And I had said that then I'm okay with that. Like the video game can be our part 3. Like this was the way that it was meant to be. I'm also not a person that's always desperately seeking that sequel. As much as I
same.
love Ghostbusters 2, I felt like Ghostbusters 1 ends, we save the day, Peter gets the girl, we're good. We're
Yeah.
happy. Like we're
Look,
Ghostbusters, we saved New York,
the only
close
thing
the
that
case.
would kill me if we didn't get Ghostbusters 2. Imagine a world where that didn't happen. There was just the one Ghostbusters. I can live with that, except that I wouldn't get the best song Bobby Brown has ever put out, which is, of course, the On Our Own song is so good. It's one of my favorite songs where someone raps the plot of the movie that the song is from.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like,
that's
but
very true.
no, I agree with you. Like the first movie is a pretty perfect, rounded out story. I have a confession to make. I know that people hate this cartoon. I was a stan for the Extreme Ghostbusters in the late 90s. I would watch it every day after school. I am aware that, to quote some people on the internet, it's some pretty PC woke garbage in the sense that every character, it's like, all right, here's the character that's in a wheelchair, here's the character that's Latino, and here's the woman and the black guy. They're all Ghostbusters now. But
Right, I know.
I
I
thought,
mean, you got to get mad at inclusivity. It's
how
terrible.
dare they? But I thought that there were some of the coolest storylines on that. Did you ever watch Extreme Ghostbusters?
I didn't. See, that was around the time of like at that point, like I'm like a cool teenager. So, like the cartoon, I kind of like fell out of fashion with the cartoon, and I would still, watch the live action movies, but kind of fell out of fashion with the cartoon at that point. But I'll tell you that I have quite a few Ghostbusters comic books. And a lot of the comic book stuff pulls from the Extreme Ghostbusters and those storylines. So the comic books I have that element of it's not just our 4 core guys. We've
Yeah.
expanded in the omnibus that I have.
I'm gonna jump into this in 1 second because I don't know what that is. So with Extreme Ghostbusters, uh, there are 2 episodes that I'm gonna recommend you try to seek out and watch. And what those were was, there was an episode that was inspired by Killer Clowns from Outer Space, sort of,
Mhm.
and it was laughter vampires. So they could only suck your life force if you were laughing. So they came in the form of clowns and would perform tricks for people. And as soon as they laughed, that person would vanish. And then the clown would lift up its hand and the person's face would be in the palm of his hand laughing for all eternity. Like it was like creepy shit like that. And then the other one was like a Wishmaster inspired thing where it was
Ooh.
a like traveling salesman who would promise that he could grant you your deepest desires. And then he would always make it like terrifying. Like the one person was like, I wish I could get back into nature a little bit more. And then he just turns into like a human tree. Like that's like
Yeah.
planted
Oh
into the
no.
like it's like I that those are just like the types of storylines that I eat
Yeah.
up.
Well,
Jack, I do get Jack Knife's thing. He clarified for me. He said, speaking of celebrating retro pop culture movie milestones, can I ask what each one of you did on October 1st, 2015, or is that too off topic? It is too off topic, but hey, I love a Back to the Future 2 reference as much as the next person. I was obviously going to see Jaws 8.
yeah. Well, there you go. I definitely have like a picture of myself on Facebook, like in my office, of me in a Back to the Future T-shirt. And yeah, I probably came home and watched Back to the Future Part Two.
Yeah, that's what you have to do.
Yeah,
Jackie, this was a blast. We
this
will
was so
have to do this.
much fun.
We have to get the whole spooky squad of horror podcasters of Geekscape on for one of these. But in the meantime, how about you tell everybody about where they can get more Jackie if they enjoyed this chat?
You can check out Jersey Ghouls on your favorite podcasting app or social media. Just search Jersey Ghouls. Every other Sunday, my partner Marissa and I, we chat about all things horror. We try to put a little feminism, a little fangirling, and we do the best that we can to make you laugh, to entertain you. And with Marissa at the helm, try to educate you, because she is my academic lady, and she will come at you with some cited sources, and I try my best to derail with some dick jokes, but we're like the black and white cookie, like we're the great combo. And yeah, I'm very excited. I'll just sneak peek, if anybody, if we have any bookworms watching tonight, this coming weekend, our episode on Sunday, you might want to tune into that one.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
For the people checking this out, I have too many podcasts, but
Mm-hmm.
if you're tuning in because you love Ghostbusters, you should check out Horror Movie Night. If you're coming to check this out because you love Gremlins, might I suggest Christmas 365? And I'll leave it at that. We will be back, I'm sure, in the coming months with another one of these sweet live streams. And thanks again to my friend Lauren, who said that she enjoyed this and maybe she's going to give Gremlins another go for Halloween or Christmas. It's a perfect Thanksgiving movie for that reason. We'll be back with more of these at some point. Subscribe, share, all of that good stuff. That's the
Mm-hmm.
best way to find out when we're going to do one of these again. All right, wave goodbye to the camera, Jackie. Wave goodbye. Wave goodbye.